Acts 25:13. So Paul is arrested. A few days later, 1, 2, 3, or more, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear this man myself." I would like to hear him speak. Probably a wonderful speaker. They discussed Paul. Festus discussed Paul's case. "Tomorrow you will hear him," he replied. So I Googled king and queen. I think this is maybe King James and Queen Elizabeth, and drew them from the Google pictures. The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, celebration, and entered the audience room with the high-ranking military officers and the prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. King Agrippa and Bernice came in with great pomp to the audience room where high-ranking military officers and prominent men of the city were. "Bring in Paul," they said. Acts 26:1. Then Agrippa said to Paul, "You have permission to speak for yourself." So Paul motioned with his hand and made his defense. Agrippa, my defense. You have permission to speak for yourself. "I consider myself fortunate to stand before you today, as I made my defense against all the accusations of the Jews, and especially so because you are well acquainted with all the Jewish customs and controversies. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently. The Messiah would suffer, and as the first to rise from the dead, would bring the message of light to his own people and to the Gentiles." So Paul's explaining the Messiah, I guess. King Agrippa, I love this. "You almost persuade me to be a Christian. I would to God that not only you, but all who hear me today." You almost persuaded me. At this point, Festus interrupted Paul's defense. "You're out of your mind, Paul. Your great learning is driving you insane." "I'm not insane, most excellent Festus. What I am saying is reasonable and true," Paul replied. "The king is familiar with these things, and I can speak freely to him. I am convinced that none of this has escaped his notice because it was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe in the prophets? I know you do. These things were not done in a corner. They weren't hidden. None of this has escaped his notice." Then Agrippa said to Paul, "Do you think that in such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian?" Paul replied, "Short time or long, I pray to God that not only you, but all who are listening to me today may become what I am, except for these chains." Can you persuade me in such a short time to be a Christian? Short time or long time, I pray. You and everyone listening may be like Paul, become like Paul, except for the chains. Acts 26:30. The king rose, and with the governor and Bernice, those sitting with him. After they left the room, they began saying to one another, "This man is not doing anything that deserves death or imprisonment." They left the room. Paul deserves no death and no imprisonment, not be in prison. The king rose, the governor rose, Bernice rose, and those sitting with them rose and left the room. Said, "He does not deserve death." Agrippa said to Festus, "This man could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar." Agrippa told Festus, "Paul would have been free except he appealed to Caesar." So Paul is in chains.